Hello ladies and gentlemen, and Happy New Year to you all. My name is Chef Andy and you're tuned in to Dinner Guide, and today I'm going to be taking you local. I'm going to be showing you 2 ways with kale, and I'm definitely looking forward to showing you something really fresh with this new episode in this new year. So definitely welcome once again to season 5. So I'm gonna start off by introducing some of my ingredients at the front here. So from the back here, I've got some milk and some plain yogurt or natural yogurt. I've also got some beautiful fresh kale. I've got some apples there. I also got some kale here that's already been cut really thinly. Then I've also got some water and some coconut milk there. I've got 1 onion. I've got some tomatoes here. And in this nice red beautiful bowl of mine, I've got some beautiful lean beef. I've also got some honey and some garlic. I've got some stock cubes there and some salt, some beautiful brown flour for the ugali. And basically this is all the tools that you need to make this very, very simple and pocket-friendly dish. So without further ado, I'm gonna give you a chance now to grab your pens and papers. And when we come back from the short break, we're gonna go cooking. So see you after short. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you're just joining us, as I mentioned, we are going to be doing very, very, very beautiful things today. I'm going to be showing you 2 ways with kale. But first off, we're going to start with a very, very simple beef stew. So to that, I'm going to be incorporating some very, very few ingredients. And as I said, we are going to try and make it more interesting and a little more pocket-friendly this season. Remember, we are in the beautiful month of January. The year is really fresh, costs are really high, and it is actually very, very busy for most of you at home. So I'm going to be bringing some new techniques with this season, and I'm going to try and make it as simple and as pocket-friendly for most of you so you can actually afford to try it yourselves at home. So without further ado, we are going to start off with our meat. And to that, I'm just going to turn my pot on the side here. Right, so we're just going to start off by browning our meat, and for that I will require just a bit of cooking oil, about a tablespoon. Simple as that. And now we're gonna add in our garlic, so I'm quickly gonna just peel my cloves quickly. So this is particularly my easiest technique of peeling garlic. Just slam it on the side of your board with a knife, and the skins really come off very, very easily. So we're just going to finish just peeling this 2 or 3 pieces. Right, so say about half a teaspoon should do really well. Remember, I'm also going to be using some beautiful beef fillet, but you're not limited to working with fillet alone. The reason I picked fillet is because it's a little more superior cut of meat, and I'm actually looking for a beautiful touch to this dish, so I'll be working with some beef fillet. So we're just quickly gonna just thinly chop our garlic. We're gonna add that to our hot pan. So basically what you wanna do is give that just a few seconds to infuse. Just give it a quick stir as you continue. Right, so just as soon as you start to get that beautiful garlic aroma in the room, you know it's about time to go in with your beef. So we're just gonna drop that in there. And we're gonna be browning that at some high heat. Right, so just give that a thorough mix and just keep turning it and let it really brown. And then now to this other end, I'll also be making some ugali. So for that, I will need some water. And now all we are going to do is get this going on some heat. So I'm actually just going to set it up at the front here. So what you want to do is just bring your water to the boil. So I'm just going to cover the pot to just rush the process a little bit. So what you want to do is bring your water to the boil. As soon as your water is hot, you just have to go in with everything else. So in the meantime, we're just going to continue with the meat. Right, so just a nice, beautiful smell coming through. The meat is browning really nicely. I'm just gonna quickly grab a plate there. So remember, we are going to brown the meat and take it out, give it a bit of time to rest. Remember, it is crucial to always rest your meat when you're cooking it, especially for such techniques, particularly because it actually allows your meat to tenderize. It allows the juices to really just flow in there, and when you actually add it into everything else much later, it actually just gives a beautiful color and finish. Right, so I'm going to allow that to continue coloring for about another 3-4 minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to quickly chop up one onion. So start off by just taking off the skins. So I'm using a red onion, but you're not limited to using just red. You can actually use a white onion. You can use some spring onions. It will actually make the difference. It will actually give it a bit of a flavor. But remember, for demonstration purposes, remember we're trying to make it budget friendly this January, and this is exactly why we are trying to keep it as cheap and as pocket friendly as we can. Right, so just some incisions into the onion and cut just almost all the way through. That should actually allow you to get these really, really beautiful cubes. Right, I'm just going to finish that off. Right, so just gonna stir that meat once more. Right, so now my beef is just about colored enough. Now all I'm going to do is just take this out quickly, and we're just going to allow it to rest on a plate on the side. Alright, so as you can be able to see from the screens there, nice, beautiful color to the meat. And as I said, this is the particular stage where you actually build your dish. It's where you actually give the meat the richness and the color it deserves. And this is exactly how it's done. Simple as that. So next on, we're just going to add some onions to that same pot we were using. And I'm also going to add just a bit of oil. Remember, the pan is dry. Remember, most of the oil has now cooked into the meat. So all you want to do now is basically, remember, there's a lot of flavor that still sits in the pan. So I recommend once you brown your meat, please don't be tempted to change pans, because you are going to lose a lot of flavor which came from the browning of the meat. So remember, there's nice bits of gravy in there that will actually really just infuse with the onions. So please don't discard them, or rather change the pot, because it actually really helps. So to that, I'm also just going to be adding some tomato. Right. So I'm going to be adding 1.5 tomatoes, and as you can see, nice big chunks. We're just going to hold that for the kale for later. I'm also not using any spices for this dish. I'm actually playing around with a no cube, and remember, these are very easy to find in most outlets out there or your regular local kiosks. These are particularly really healthy for you because, first of all, they are made with the most natural of ingredients. And particularly if you're looking at being pocket friendly and looking for just a naturally beautiful flavor for such a dish, these things are really, really handy. Right, so I'm using a beef cube for this dish. Right, so you want to just add that and basically just saute everything together. Now remember, this being a very, very much dry kind of fry, I'm not actually going to be adding any liquid in there. Remember, there's plenty of juices that come with the tomatoes, and basically if you cook them down really well, you do actually manage to get this beautiful gravy. Right, so our cube is just absorbed now. And now to that, all I'm going to do is just bring back the beautiful meat we had earlier. And as you can see from the bowl, you can see the amount of juices that are on the pan. So that actually tells you the meat has rested, the juices have come out, and the meat is now just tender enough to continue cooking. Right, so we're just gonna turn that on low, we're gonna allow that to continue on low heat. And in the meantime, I'm just going to bring your attention back to the pot we had earlier. So remember, in here we only had some water, there's not anything else I added in there. And basically this is just for the ugali. So I'm quickly going to grab that and some salt. And all I'm going to add is a small pinch of salt there. It actually gives it a bit of flavor. And then to that, we're just going to go ahead and grab our wooden spoon. I'm just using a regular kitchen spoon. And all you're going to do now is, I always like to insist, always just let your spoon just sit in the water a little bit. Just move your spoon around. Allow it to actually get a bit wet, because it will allow you to actually or rather cook your ugali really well, and it will not actually stick to the spoon as it should. Right, so I'm just going to add that in small bits. So I'm just going to go about a third of the mixture and just give it a mix. Remember, particularly when you're making ugali, the liquid will dictate how much flour goes in. So I insist, don't pour all your flour in at once. Remember, you're going to have to add some hot water in there. And if you didn't have any pre-boiled water, adding cold water to this will totally ruin the dish. Right, so just going to add just a little bit more. And all you're going to do now is, using your spoon, you're just going to work your way around. Right, so this is now just about getting to the consistency we are looking for. Right, so this actually needs quite a bit of work, and particularly for the fact that we are using brown flour. Remember, this cooks a little longer than the regular maize flour. But the particular beautiful thing about this is it is actually healthier for you. It's much healthier than what you'd substitute anything else for. And as I said, it is actually more cost effective than just buying regular maize flour. Right, so this is just about done. But remember, we are going to give it some time to really cook through. So what I like to do is, just when it gets to that consistency, I like to just cover it and leave it on low heat. This actually allows you to cook it right through to the center, and it actually develops some flavor when it steams in its own remaining liquid. So now our ugali is done. We're just going to set those aside. We're just going to quickly come back and check on the stew. Alright, so we're just basically going to continue frying this just until our tomatoes are completely broken down. But to that, I will also incorporate just a bit of salt for seasoning. And last but not least, I always like to add some freshly ground black peppercorns. Right, and all you need to do now is just continue mixing it. And remember, the mixing process also helps in two ways. It helps you make sure there's an even cooking right through your dish. And second of all, it actually also helps you to break your tomatoes a little faster. So our meat is about another 5-6 minutes. While that continues, I'm also going to get another pan going. But before we do that, quickly want to show you a technique of how you can actually make or present your ugali a little better. I know a lot of you have always tried to think of different techniques of how to serve your ugali, so I'm just going to show you a very easy one. So I like to use a bowl on most occasions, and all I do now is add just a bit of oil in there. So this just allows me to make sure that the flour will not stick in there once I have it inside. So just with your finger, just work your way right around the bowl and make sure it's totally covered. And all you're going to do now is take out your ugali, but I'm going to just knead it a little more. And you will actually be able to get a different kind of aroma once you allow it to steam a little bit. It actually starts to really dry out really well. And now, as you can see, the pan actually gets cleaner as you continue. I always insist, move your ugali around if you can. See if you can incorporate all that excess flour and that's stuck on the sides. And now this is now ready. Oh, now we're just going to let that pan reheat. And now all you're left to do now is just using your spoon, just grab the ugali, move it into your bowl. And then using the outer side of your spoon, just work your way around the ugali like that. Right, simple as that, and this is now done. So I'm just going to set that aside on the front there. And now I will also ask for us to grab your attention as well to the pan that's already on the heat. So remember, this particular pan we're going to be cooking our kale in, and I'm just quickly going to show you how we'll do that. Also check on our meat, just mix that once more. Right, our meat is now just about done. Now all I'm going to do is just cover that, and we're just going to turn off the heat and just allow that to rest a little bit. In the meantime, I'm going to direct your attention this side once more. And now to that, I'm going to be adding just a bit of vinegar. And I'll also add just a bit of olive oil. And all we're going to do now is fry our kale. So I'm just going to allow the pan to heat up a little bit. Just move your pan around. Allow that oil to just go around the pan. And all we are going to do now is add our kale in there. Right, so something also to remember kale will wilt slowly, and it will actually shrink in size. So very, very, very particular that when you're planning to make kale, please always make sure to actually try and measure out a little bit more. So as you can see, I used 3 bunches of kale here. But remember, what happens is as the vegetables continue to cook, they continue to wilt, so they are going to shrink in size, as you'll see in a few minutes. So very, very important that you actually give it a nice frying before you incorporate all the other ingredients. And as you can see, I used very, very, very little oil in here. Remember, we are working with a healthy option. So I've actually used a very, very little amount of oil. Now, while that continues to cook, I'm quickly going to chop up some tomato. And then we're also going to add just a bit of onion. So just a quick, nice fine chop. Right, simple as that. And all I'm going to do now is incorporate everything into the pan. Right, discard that. And now all you're left to do now is continue mixing. So basically what you're looking for at this stage is, remember I'm using very little oil and I'm using almost no water at all. But my secret, I do have a secret to that. Particularly for this recipe, I like to always incorporate my kale with a bit of coconut and a bit of milk. So in the glass here I have about a quarter cup of regular coconut milk. And then to that I'm going to just thin it up with a little full cream, just regular full cream milk. And then just pour that right around my pan. And then turn my heat really low. And all you want to do now is just give it a mix, just to make sure you've got all your kale just coated in that beautiful coconut. Simple as that. And then what you need to do now is just try and spread it around the pan. Remember, you have a big pan. The surface area actually really helps. So do actually try and use as much of the pan as you possibly can. I'm just going to spread those around. And to that, I'm going to add just a little bit more of some more milk. And now we're just going to allow that to continue cooking on low heat. Right, so while this continues, I'm quickly going to just flip my board around and I'm just going to grab a fresh knife. And basically now, I want to now show you how to make that kale smoothie that I mentioned earlier. So very, very simple. For this particular process, you will actually need a blender for this. So if you don't have one, I recommend please don't try and mash it with your hand. It will not give you the same consistency. Right, so in a blender, we're just going to start off by chopping up our apples. So I'm just going to go around the side, so I'll show you how to do that. So all I do is take a nice bit of chunk off the side, but just almost close to the center, and then turn it 90 degrees and just continue doing that right around until you get to the last end. And basically now you have the core removed, so this can be discarded, and all you're left to do is just cube your green apple. Just like that, very, very simple. Now, I'm just going to move those into my jug here. I'm just going to slice a little more. Right, so particularly kale in a smoothie is really, really handy. Remember, this is all a matter of health this particular January season. And as I said, we're going to be focusing on a lot of different healthy options for you at home, options that are a little more pocket friendly, and options that you might be able to do over and over again. As I said, we're sticking to very, very simple recipes that even your kids at home can be able to remember and even try out these things when you're not at home. But of course, I always insist, if you're going to recommend your children to actually cook on their own, always take a bit of time to give them advice on the do's and don'ts in the kitchen. Always point them in the right direction before allowing them to do so, just to make sure you don't actually put yourself in a bit of a jeopardy. Right, so in goes our apples. And then to that, I've got also some natural yogurt. So I'm just going to pour all that in there. And then just to thin that down, just so that we can be able to blend it, I'm also just going to pour some milk. Remember, the milk will sink right to the bottom and it will actually allow everything to blend really easily. So what I like to do is, first of all, just break up the apples. So I'm just going to direct your attention this way to the blender. So I'm just going to give it a few clicks just to try and break the apples. Right, so as soon as you have a nice runny liquid like that, you can actually now add in the kale. Remember, particularly to actually keep your blender for the longest, I always insist don't add everything at once and put so much load on your blade at the bottom, because that will actually just ruin your blender. So I always insist, try and do it in small amounts, or put a bit of liquid and just get a consistency going first and then add everything else in after. So I'm just going to grab all my kale. It's just all gonna go in there. And to that, I'm going to be adding about 1.5 tablespoons of just some natural honey. So remember, honey is a healthier option to using sugar, and it's actually why we've used it for this particular recipe. Right, so we're just going to give the kale a quick mix. And now that is now done. So we'll just turn off the heat. And I'll allow that to sit on the side and bring your attention back this way. So remember, your kale is in there. If you're just catching up, in here we've got some green apples, some natural yogurt, some honey, and some fresh kale. And basically we're just finishing off our smoothie. Right. Right, so you might notice that the kale will not automatically sink from the first step. So very, very crucial that you actually have a spoon or something that you can use to give the mixture a bit of a mix. So I like to just fold in my kale by pressing it towards one end of the jug, like that, and just be sure to press it at least as deep as you can, just to be able to make sure that the kale is completely covered. And then I'm just going to add the rest of my honey right at the top. And now we can just finish this off and get the smoothie we were looking for. Right, so our smoothie is now done, so this is very ready to serve. But we are going to take a short commercial break before I get to the serving bit of the show. And when we come back, I'll have cleaned all the station, all this mess, and I'm just going to show you how to proceed from then on. So please don't touch that dial, we'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're just back from our short break, and now everything's now ready. As I said, our spinach has now cooked and it's fully just ready. It's just about ready to serve. I also have some meat here for those, a fried beef here that for those of you who missed out, I'm actually just going to fill you in as we continue. But what we're actually going to do now is we're just going to go straight into the plating, and I'll start with my left. So very, very simple. You remember we made the brown ugali just before the break, and I'm just going to show you a technique of how to plate that. So I'm just going to hold my plate right over the bowl, and then I'll turn it around. Just set your plate on the counter and just tap it a little bit and it'll just slide out. I'm also just going to grab this beautiful kale. I'm just using a tongue just to try and keep it together without making a mess. And we're just going to move that onto the plate like that. Simple and easy. And last but not least, I have also the fried beef, which I'm just going to serve on this other side. Right, so ladies and gentlemen, as I said, very, very simple, easy, economical, and I bet also interesting, and I hope you're actually going to try it yourselves. But I do have something also that we were making before we took a short commercial break, and that was the kale, apple, and yogurt smoothie. So that I'm just going to serve in this beautiful tall glass. It's right to the top, and I can actually reserve that for later. So I would just simply serve that as it is. As I said, a very, very beautiful, healthy option. And as I mentioned when we began the show, we were actually going to work with 2 ways with kale. And now you've managed to see it. One which is just fried with onions, tomatoes, and a bit of milk. And of course, the smoothie that's sitting in front of us today. So it has been a pleasure being with you today, and I hope you've all learned something new, and you're definitely looking forward to try this yourselves at home. As I always insist, we do have a channel. Do check out our Facebook page. Do check out our YouTube videos. If you do have any questions or any comments or any inquiries, we will also look at them, and we definitely look forward to get back to you. So from my end, it has been fun. I'm going to bid you farewell now, and I'm going to bid you a lovely evening. I'm also going to wish you a lovely, prosperous year ahead. And for those of you who are definitely going to be looking forward to be enjoying dinner today, if you're going to be making something similar to this, I do hope you enjoy it. So from the studios and myself, have a lovely evening.